I have with me today Catherine Morey-Nase. Catherine is a former trademark attorney and is the creator of the Wellbeing Corner, which is dedicated to meditation and mindfulness for women. The Wellbeing Corner runs meditation courses for beginners and it takes groups of women on guided mindful hiking days. Today we're going to be talking about mindfulness and meditation and our senses. So welcome, Catherine.
Thanks, Briony. It's lovely to be here.
Such a pleasure having you. Now, I know you believe that we should be using our senses in a more conscious way. So why exactly is that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So engaging our senses is actually something we tend to do quite instinctively to relax. So, for example, we might listen to music, but if we can actually engage our senses in a much more conscious, more deliberate way, we actually can relax our bodies and calm our minds much more effectively. And this is because when we engage our senses, we actually shift from our default setting, which is our thinking mind, which is almost a sort of compulsive stream of thoughts, which, interestingly, we can actually often be thinking without even realising we're thinking. And so when we shift into this sensing mode, engaging our senses in a very conscious way, there's actually a really distinct shift in the brain that takes place.
Okay.
They're very opposite kind of modes.
Yeah, being very present, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So when we're thinking, it's a very high energy active state, and thinking usually tends to involve concepts of past and future. And with that, of course, tends to come anyway for a lot of us concerns or worries about things we've done in the past or we haven't, and worrying about what we need to do in the future. And when we engage our senses, that really does bring us into the present moment. And it's actually a way of helping to calm the thoughts down. So we can't actually forcefully stop our thoughts. I mean, our minds are designed to think, and they do a great job of it most of the time. But sometimes we can get really kind of caught up in thinking, and it can be really hard to disengage. And simply trying to force the thoughts to stop doesn't work. It can usually end up making us more frustrated. So
that's right. I know that some people, there are a lot of people that think all the time, and we all do it, but some people, find it so much harder than others, and there's so much going on in their heads, but they really think it's a good thing and they enjoy it. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think even the people who don't tend to think that they do think all the time, when they actually stop and pay attention, I know when I first started meditating, and for the first time really ever in my life, was sitting there paying attention to the thought processes, I was completely overwhelmed by how incessant, sort of seemingly random and inconsequential they were. So it can be a really welcome relief to shift into that different, more passive, more relaxing sensing mode.
And so how do we go about actually, using our senses more?
Yeah, sure. So meditation is actually a great way, and whether we realise it or not, pretty much all meditation techniques involve bringing our focus to a sensation. So whether that's listening to the sound of the breath, or feeling the breath in the body, or feeling other bodily sensations, or even listening to sounds around us. But, meditation's not for everyone, so we can absolutely engage our senses in almost any context. We just need to be a bit creative and really pay attention. So one of my favourite things to do is I'll buy a coffee most mornings. And the really simple act of doing that, you can engage 3 of your senses. So when I'm waiting for the coffee to be made, I love listening and just tuning into that sound of the steam as the milk is being heated.
Yeah.
And that's actually surprisingly relaxing. And then,
so what you're saying is that there's little rituals that we all do, every day, that we can go, this is our time to focus on something and use this as a practice.
Exactly, but just bringing that more conscious awareness to it, because it's one thing doing something. So it's one thing drinking a cup of coffee and our mind could be somewhere else completely and we don't even taste the coffee.
Yeah.
It's quite another thing smelling the coffee and really taking the time to savour the taste.
And this is obviously part of mindfulness, isn't it? So what is the benefit for mindfulness? Why should we be paying attention to every, part of our day?
Well, I mean, clearly it's not practical to pay attention in every, really focused attention in every moment of every day. But I think one of the real benefits of bringing mindfulness in these very small ways into the everyday busy office environment, for example, is that it just provides little moments of stillness interspersed throughout the day, where we do shift from this very active thinking state that can create quite a lot of stress in the body. So it's just readdressing that balance.
I suppose most of the time when you're thinking of something else and the situation you're in at that moment isn't stressful and we're creating all this stress. So it's probably good for that, isn't it, just to calm everything and
absolutely
keep us in that moment.
Absolutely, and it does require just practice and conscious thought. The hardest part actually about doing even these little things that we're talking about is actually remembering to do them.
We just need little reminders for ourselves. And so how long do we need to practice meditation, or how often should we be doing it?
So people tend to think that, you know, the most benefit from meditation is to have a sort of regular seated meditation practice. Say you might do 20 minutes every morning. And that's fantastic. That's what I do. And I have derived enormous benefit from that. But I think, you know, that's not for everyone and it can be hard to achieve. So actually bringing shorter, what I call mini meditations into the everyday is enormously beneficial, because when we're meditating, you know, in the calm environment of our home first thing in the morning, that's one thing. But bringing that same sense of calm awareness into our everyday, where we tend to be stressed and we don't stop, is much harder to do. But really by just taking a few moments to take a few deep sighs or just pausing between one activity to another actually is enormously beneficial.
I suppose you can always escape to the toilet or something, can't you? And just...
Absolutely. And, you know, we tend to think of meditation as sitting with our legs crossed and eyes closed, and you can meditate pretty much anywhere, eyes open. It's just a matter of practice and remembering to do it, as I keep saying.
So is it still effective to do just mini meditations rather than, like you said, those 20-minute daily?
It really is. I mean, you know, these mini meditations don't have quite the same level of prestige, and they seem so simple and so inconsequential. But I was reading an interview with a neuropsychologist whose work I love, Rick Hansen, and he says we really shouldn't underestimate the power of little things, which, when they're done consistently over time, do create significant change, and change that is actually able to be monitored in the brain.
Well, it's true, isn't it? It's always about consistency with anything that we do. It's
absolutely,
you know, as long as you're doing it, isn't it? It's better.
It doesn't matter how little.
Yeah, and can you give examples of mini meditations that
Sure.
you do?
So one I really love doing is called Stop Before You Start. So it's basically, you can do it between any activity. So you might take a breath out, just pause, and just reorient yourself towards your next activity. And one I love doing, and I think it's really good to form a habit with these things, is when I hop into the car, before I put the key in the ignition, I just stop, breathe out, pause, and then away I go. And it just becomes something I always do every time I get into the car. Okay,
just nice little reminders for ourselves to
absolutely.
Be a bit more mindful and calmer. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us today. If people want to know more about your walks that you do with women or meditation courses, where can they find more information?
Absolutely. So they can come to my website, which is www.thewellbeingcorner.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine.